Welcome to a Podful of Saints on Wednesday, the 18th of January 2023, Series 4, number 25. Number 25 for the second week running after somebody screwed up last week. Myself, David Tavener, over there, man on the controls, Jake Ellacott.
Hello, Dave. I mean, I thought last week's introduction went so well till I saw your correction. So, yeah, sorry everyone that saw that, but otherwise, hello.
And a good evening to Lee Wood.
And you wonder why I have to drink just to get through these pods, fellas. Good evening, David. Good evening, Jacob. Good evening, everybody. Hope you're all well.
Whatever you've got, Lee, I bet it's stronger than my coffee. Right, we have one game to look back on. We were going to have two, but last night's game at Bulpit Lane against Hungerford Town was called off because of a frozen pitch. That would have been the anniversary of a certain event, Jake, when we were coming back from a game.
Thanks for the reminder of that, Dave.
Never to be forgotten. Anyway, let's look back on the one match we did have last Saturday. Tonbridge Angels, they became the first visiting side to win two successive league matches 3-2 at Clarence Park. It was a wet day. Pitch was a bit muddy in parts, but I thought it was quite an entertaining game. How'd it go down with you two?
Yeah, it was entertaining. The result was not exactly what we wanted, though, which is my main complaint. Yeah, as I say, the pitch and the conditions were really difficult, actually. I think it's one of the worst states I've seen the Clarence Park pitch in for a long, long time, probably since arguably that Exeter City back in the conference. Yeah, so I think, you saw how many times, especially the Saints players, were slipping over. But yeah, fun game, but I think there was just a few issues that sadly cost us in the end.
Well, it's interesting, wasn't it? After the Oxford City game we lost the previous week, David Noble made 4 changes, only one of which was forced on him. With Shaun Jeffers out with a muscle injury to one of his 600 muscles. We don't know which one. And the 3 other players, Joy McKenna, Minesh Sundar and Mitchell Weiss, all dropped down to the bench. It sounds drastic, but when you look at the players that came in, particularly Ryan Blackman and Glenn McConnell, having seen the Oxford game, they're not such a big surprise, are they?
No, not for me. And I thought both of them had reasonable games. I think it's Shaun, you can't do much about the force back, but I think the change at the back, I think certainly raised post-match after seeing how we defended at times, I think certainly raised quite a few questions for me. And I think that's one thing I'd go back on. I wonder if Nobby sort of reflects on that and thinks, should I have made that change? Because Clarkey didn't exactly have his greatest game, did he?
He did all right. He's had worse ones.
That's
what
not...
did you...
Low bar.
Low bar indeed. And the other change was, of course, Joe Neal coming in up front for Shaun Jeffers. What did you make of it, Ollie?
Yeah, I had to watch the highlights because I wasn't able to attend the game. But one question I want to put to you fellas is that we spoke last week about good players having bad games, pointing a reference to Mitchell's abomination in front of goal at Oxford. Having watched the highlights, but I saw a bit of feedback online about Michael Clarke's performance. Now, I think you've got to take this into context. And Tavs, you've just alluded to there that he's had worse games. This was by far his best in a Saints shirt. But given the fact that Adebayi, McKenna have done so well this season, throw into the equation the impact that Job's had at the back, and you could probably introduce the Trollio into this argument as well. Do you feel as though Michael Clarke is now perhaps looking over his shoulder a bit? Did you feel a surprise when he came in? Because, I mean, not the goals were his fault, but I could perhaps see why some people were saying he's not as dispensable as perhaps Mitchell was after his misses at Oxford the week before.
I would hope every player's looking over their shoulder, Lee. We don't want anybody too complacent. Yeah, I should think he's looking over his shoulder just like everybody else is. They try and perform to their best. It doesn't always work. You could look at Mamadou Job. Job for the first goal last week. It wasn't the greatest tackle he put in, was it? And then they got through and scored. McClarkey on the day didn't strike me as being our worst player.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, I think that because Jeffers was out, you automatically feel as we're going to struggle. But whereas it was our defensive frailty that sort of come to the top in the end. But I think you've got to take it, as I said before, you've got to take it into context that regular pod watcher, Cameron Miller, God bless him, he made a very, very good point. He was at Oxford and he was at the game on Saturday. And although we're losing games, which isn't great, it's still, we're creating chance after chance. We're creating chances and it's still really good to watch. You look at the chances that Devontae had, Blackman had, Joe Neal had, we're still creating really good chances. And if we were perhaps a little bit tighter at the back, 9 times out of 10, we come away with 3 points on Saturday. So although bad day at the office, we can't be looking to have too many more if we really want to be sort of like challenging for the playoffs at least.
What did you think regarding the chances, Jake? Because I felt our biggest threat was Glenn McConnell. He obviously got us 2 goals. What 2 superb finishes. That first one was audacious. The second one was clinical. Quite superb. And Nobby took him off and he hinted in the interview, getting tired. Well, he's 17. His full-time training with Cambridge United. That would surprise me if he was getting tired. He would cope with that pitch as well as anybody, I would have thought. And given that I thought he was our biggest threat, I thought it was a surprise to take him off. And, well, poor old Joe Neal alongside him, he can't buy a goal, can he?
Yeah, McConnell going off was really disappointing. And I think that's where the game changed, because up until that point, we were looking very dangerous, just equalised. We're creating chances. And as you said, I'm sure he's played on much worse pitches than that at youth level. You know, it wasn't amazing, but it was still better than some. And yeah, I think taking him off, I think in reflection, again, a bit of a mistake for me. I don't know if we could have brought on Mitch a little bit earlier as well, but then when Mitch came on, he didn't do a particularly large amount either. I mean, Joe Neal played the full 90. Did he deserve to play that full 90 again in terms of, did he get a lot of shots away on goal, or those chances that he did have, you know, get shots away?
It's saying to me, Jake, mate, that is the first time that you've messaged me and sort of bemoaned the changes and the use of the substitutions. After just going back to your point, McConnell, what an absolute package! What an absolute player he is. You know, he's got the all-round ability there, and you can only see his worth skyrocketing and him progressing through the ranks over the course of his career. But I mean, when you've got young Jacob here messaging me saying, I think Nobby possibly got it wrong today. He's going to have bad days at the office in terms of the way he sort of, you know, looks at the substitutions and the impact they have on the game. But Dave, getting back to your point though, mate, it's good that we've got these players that we can bring on. And you mentioned Joe Neal. We spoke about this last week. I think it's a point proven there, mate. The fact that he should have been the one that perhaps made way.
It is, but maybe it was a kick up the backside for Mitch after missing it. But he don't deliberately miss those chances at Oxford. These things happen, don't they? Oxford missed a couple of sitters as well. So he wasn't the only one on the day. Joe, he had his chance. He was played central rather than out wide, and it didn't really work for him, unfortunately. He's when it has worked is when he's come on in the wide position in recent games. With Mitch likely to be out again Saturday, one suspects. Presumably Mitch will be recalled.
Yeah, I mean, you have to put this all into perspective, don't you? Of Shaun was out, and you know that man has scored, you know, a lot of goals for us this season already, and it's always going to be difficult. I think in an ideal situation, it would have been Shaun and Glenn McConnell up front on Saturday, you know, dropping Mitch instead. Obviously, it happened, and I suspect if Shaun's out, you'll see Mitch come in. But you know, like Lee says, you know, still lots of positives to come forward in the final attacking third. Lots of chances, you know, 2 really good goals. I think, you know, I just hope we can keep Glenn a little bit longer. But yeah, you know, a poor result, but there's no point chucking everything out the window after 2 games that we've narrowly lost both of them.
I like your point there. Can we keep Glenn a bit later, Jake? Because we have got a lot of lone players at the moment, which isn't team building in my eyes. It's short term. So what Nobby eventually does, I know we touched on this before, what eventually does in the transfer market is going to be very interesting, because these players will go back to their clubs eventually.
But surely adding quality players in and around the current set you've got is only going to raise their game. It's going to give them confidence because they're winning fixtures along in the process. I know what you're saying, but something had to be done. Don't forget that we are in Nobby was inheriting a low confidence squad, so he had to be. You know, it was quite evident that club weren't going to allow him to go out and buy players. He didn't have a checkbook to spend of any worth, and yet all he's got to do is resort to the loan market. And by God, he's done it exceptionally well. So, and short term is great, but you don't really know what situation Nobby's on himself. You know, you don't really know how he's thinking. He's got time now. He's got an opportunity to integrate these young stars into an already established squad in the Conference South, and hopefully that amalgamation can only create a team which is going to breed success. Surely.
Well, I hope so. He's still got the problem of replacing. He's still got the problem of replacing those players at the end of their loans. He's got to face it one day. But as you say, if they help us in the meantime, they boost the players around them as well. We do benefit in the meantime.
Yeah, but also I think you've undersold the club as well, because Dylan Berry doesn't sign on until the end of the season. If Norwich think that there's no worth in him staying, you know, there's nothing to say. You know, we've seen it in the past where players have come for, you know, they've come to us, had a really brief spell, excelled, gone back to the parent club, and then come back again. And it doesn't always work the second time around. It very, very rarely sort of does. But if they then go back to the parent club and explain they had a wonderful time there, the setup is superb, the training is excellent, that then sows seeds for us to get further stars down the line. And although it's not a model to build a successful football team on, Dave, you're absolutely spot on there. But at the minute, when there's no real money coming into Nobby's hands to buy players outright, this is probably the best option that he's got at his disposal, mate.
You go along with the loan way we use him loans, Jake?
I think for now, yeah. I think we talked about, you know, once Nobby came in, I think we talked about the squad didn't have much depth. You know, we were dipping into the academy. I think he's addressed that and brought in some more senior players. And also I'd say, you know, as well, players like Ryan Blackman, you know, when we first saw it, we were like, oh, a loan from another Conference South club. Now we've seen him. I think we can see he's a good player. And if in the summer, you know, he's now got that experience of being at St Albans City, if he's really liked it and if his contract's up at Concord, there's a chance there that we can sign him permanently. So, you know, that's another thing to consider as well. So I think the loan market, I think Nobby's using it well at the minute. And, you know, the 3 of the 4 are on terms until the end of the season. So you've got that consistency. It's more just the Glenn McConnell situation, isn't it? Of will he stay? Will he go? If he does go, what do we do? But yeah, I think Nobby's doing a pretty good job considering not much money. His director of football left a month ago. That's a lot of change there and a lot of situations he's had to deal with. And I think he's dealing with them well.
What did you make of Tonbridge, Jake? They were, 8 points behind us before the game, played a game more. They were the first team to give Chelmsford an away defeat, first team to win at Ebbsfleet. So they got a bit of pedigree there, despite some dodgy results elsewhere. And they had, was it Jordan Greenwich up front on loan from Hemel? And now 9 goals in 10 games?
Yes, apparently Hemel fans aren't particularly happy that he was allowed to go on loan by the previous Hemel manager. So he caused us all sort of troubles, didn't he? And I think once again on Saturday, we sort of saw that set piece weakness that we've had for quite a while now, sort of conceding from them. And I think at the end, actually, if you look at the free kick we gave away for their 3rd goal, it was a very silly free kick to give away, wasn't it? So just those little things. But yeah, I thought Tonbridge were reasonable. I thought they were better at Clarence Park than they were when we played them down on August Bank Holiday. And they stuck in the game. You know, second half, they didn't have a lot of chances. They hung in. But again, similar to Oxford, they defended really well, didn't they? They had that really good last-ditch defending that, again, maybe we could learn something out of. And they clung on and got that win. But interestingly, again, Jay Saunders is one of basically every manager who faced the season that said we're one of the best teams they've played this season. So, you know, it's nice to hear it after the game. But, yeah, just, you know, it's just one of those days for me, I'm afraid.
Carr in Wiltshire, he came out 150th player to play 100 or more games for the club. He had a couple of chances early on. Maybe one of his quieter days overall, and eventually got substituted. Yeah,
I think it was a funny game, wasn't it? I thought Ryan Blackman looked all right in midfield, but otherwise our midfield, was it that good on Saturday? I don't know. I think Kyron struggled somewhat. I don't know if that's to do with the pitch, to do with the system at all. Yeah, he's not going to play well every game, is he? I think,
Was the pitch that bad? I mean, because it was cutting up. It was cutting up spectacularly for the Hemel game. So obviously it's the same for both sides. That old jazz, but the players that we've got, they do like to get it down there. They do like to play those intricate passes and the patterns, etc. So I don't know whether it's something that is preventing us from sort of doing so at the minute.
It was particularly heavy in front of a cola stand. But it was certainly playable. A game was never in any doubt.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
in the course of a season, you're going to get a lot worse pitches than that. Yeah, you're right. It probably doesn't help a passing game when it's like that. But overall, there was enough on that pitch to get a decent game, as the two sides proved. Actually, it was quite entertaining.
Yeah, I think Tafari Moore struggled a lot, didn't he? Especially second half. He could barely control the ball at times down that left-hand side. And I think that took a little bit of our threat down that side, actually. And for some reason, we kept wanting to play down that side, even though Tafari was not really having much luck. So I would have liked to have seen Devontae a bit more involved on the other side when it was a little bit easier for him. But yeah, struggled a little bit. But yeah, it didn't terribly impact us. Tonbridge just, they got the result.
It's funny, going to Hungerford, we spoke about last week, on a Tuesday night. It's not the ideal thing, but they're bottom of the table. A win then would have done us a world of good. We'd have been 6 points clear of Eastbourne in 8th place. As it is now, we're looking over our shoulder as well. Want to win to stay ahead of that pack when Cheshunt are at the park.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, fellas, we spoke about all these loan players that have come in. Can I just ask you your opinion on where the academy setup now fits into all of this? Because obviously the owners were sort of sold a vision that there was going to be this, this feed of good, young, local talent bolstering our ranks. And do you think the fact that now that Dean Austin's gone and the fact we're signing younger, more professional players from pro clubs, do you reckon that sort of puts the kibosh on any sort of instant success that youngsters are going to get coming into the first team at City now?
Well, it would suggest so. I think you made a good point there, Lee. George Morel seems to have disappeared off the radar. Ricardo de Trolio, you mentioned earlier, he's been on the bench quite a lot lately, not playing. Beyond that, who's coming through?
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah,
I think. Sorry. I think Ben Smith was the one that looked good, wasn't he? But he's been injured now for quite a while. I think de Trolio is definitely the mystifying one, isn't it? I think I thought he played pretty well in the majority of his appearances, and then sort of just stopped, and now can't get into the side. And I think Mamadou Job's come in and has probably claimed where de Trolio maybe would have fit in there. But I think Job deserves that. He looks really good. But then you just wonder, instead of Michael Clark, could that have been the game for de Trolio on Saturday to come back into the side? So, yeah, so I think there's a lot of question marks about how the academy fits in. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that it's a bit tough for them to get into the first team. I'd probably prefer them to be playing B team games and sat on the bench every week and not coming on. But yeah, a lot of question marks. But then it's a testament to how much Nobby's managed to strengthen the first team squad, which is good for me.
You mentioned earlier the director of football has gone. We recall the fiasco over the appointment of a new manager. Supposedly managers being called in for second interviews, this, that and
fiasco?
The other.
That was the more polite word that you used, Tabs, wasn't it?
And it ended up going to Nobby, which everyone's happy about as it works out, of course. We were told the process has started for getting a new director of football when Dean Austin left. Anybody heard anything? It seems to be like the same wall of silence.
No.
I thought if anyone was going to be privy to information, that'd be you, Tabs. Because because you write for the program, you're in constant communication with the media team. Surely, if anyone, and you speak to the players, you speak to the coaches, so if anyone's going to know anything, right, it's going to be you.
I wouldn't ask them, Lee. I wouldn't put them in that position. If they want to volunteer the information, if they feel they can, fair enough, but I wouldn't put them in that position. But I think those at the top end of the club now, everything is kept so tight and quiet, either because there's nothing happening or they do like keeping it all to themselves until things are announced.
it's like the Masons, isn't it? You know, there's this sort of secrecy. You know, they've got this pact as though we're not going to share any information until we know the absolute honest truth. I mean, we're looking at this now. Director of football at this level. We've spoke about it, and we've laboured the point. But is it going to be of any real benefit? Seriously, because they've got this. Nobby is obviously quite content with getting these young starlets in from league football. So, and it's working to a degree. But the thing is, if there's money there to be spent, then surely it'd have been coming our way anyway, regardless of our director of football. So you've got to, if you trust a manager, you trust the manager. You don't need a director of football at every single stage of the process. If he identifies a player and he wants him in, then surely the checkbook should be forthcoming.
As we know from the accounts at Company's House, this club's made a hell of a lot of money the last 2 or 3 years. The gates are now over 1,200 again last Saturday against Tonbridge, which is a terrific gate. All right, they didn't pay because I didn't all pay because a lot of them are kids and had to go with a fee-paying adult. But even so, it's still a great figure. So this club has money. There's no two ways about it. But as you're right there, Lee. We're not seeing it in the transfer market, are we?
We're not, but I think the club needs to understand that 1,200. I mean, we've seen games against Tunbridge, mate, that barely get 12. So I think to get 1,200, I think the club should be very, very pleased with the way they're marketing the home games in particular. And I think that just needs to sort of settle down, and they know the worth of what they've got and the model and the way they market themselves. Money has always been a bone of contention at City, simply because we've not always had it. And now when we do have it, people want it to sort of go out the door as though there's no tomorrow. But that's not always the way it works. You know, obviously you've still got the new ground on the horizon potentially. Contractors cost money. You know, all this process costs money. So maybe that's what that's going towards. But until that point comes, mate, I mean, we're happy with a lot at the minute in terms of competitive first team football, and long may that continue.
But it's funny, one of your first seasons, Jake, I mean, it might have been your first or second one, was in the Conference National. We had average gates of 1,150, but Lee and I have been going a while before that. We're not used to gates like this at all. And it's an achievement to the media team, but we're getting them these figures. You just hope the club aren't getting complacent and taking it for granted that these people are going to turn up week after week. No, and they've got to invest in the side to keep it up there.
I hope not. And I think it's a testament to a lot of the people that are coming along that they're sticking with us. The weather's been, frankly, awful over the last month and a half, isn't it? Cold, wet, windy. Most home games at the minute, we seem to be getting soaked. And I was quite surprised by the crowd on Saturday, given the downpour about half hour beforehand. So, you know, testament to people that are sticking around. But, yeah, people will move away and drift away if the football doesn't stay entertaining, you know, and the club has got to stick at that. I think they deserve a lot of plaudits for what they've managed to achieve so far. But yeah, you know, you've got to stick with that. And that's why, you know, I sort of say is, you know, the money that you would invest in a director of football, do we really need to invest that into that role right now? I don't know, but not for me.
Oh, thank goodness. Right, we mentioned Cheshunt already. We'll quickly move on to that then. This Saturday at Clarence Park, the 21st of January. Cheshunt are coming. They've played 3 league games at the park, haven't won any of those. But, of course, they won 3-1 in the Hart Senior early this year. Was it Richards, whatever his name is, got a hat-trick. And they stuffed us 3-0 in the trophy last season. They won their opening game this season, lost the next 10 league games, but prior to last Saturday's defeat against Dartford, they were 6 unbeaten. They've turned it round, and they're only 1 point of getting out the relegation places. This is not going to be an easy one.
This is going to be far, far from easy. You know, their manager's just won Manager of the Month for December. You know, he's got a good pedigree himself. They've got some good players, but I think their team unity is the one thing that shines through. Yeah, you know, underestimate them at your peril, because we've come unstuck where we've gone in. So I think I'm probably as guilty of this as anyone else. Given the run that we were on under Nobby, I was sort of just thinking we were going to go into games and win them because of the style of football we've been playing. The result at Tonbridge brought me down to earth, an absolute bump. And I think this could be another situation where, unless we're on it in all facets, defensively especially, because they're going to come at us as well, we are going to be on the wrong end of a result unless we get our mentality right as towards.
Yeah, because also down at their place, when they were on that losing run and we won, they had the goalkeeper, Preston Edwards, sent off. So we had things in our favour to get through that one.
Yeah, and they should have scored in the last minute as well to make it 2-2. But yeah, that was under a previous regime. You know, we've improved since then.
Previous regime. You make it sound
there's been a coup d'etat since then. But you know, Preston Edwards he's sitting on the bench now, isn't he, for them? Interestingly, but you know, there's been a few changes there. Craig Edwards hasn't been afraid to ring them in, and you know, it is working for them. But I say they lost last Saturday. Hopefully that can be the start of another poor run for them, but it's going to be difficult. And I think this is probably the one positive out of not playing Hungerford on Tuesday. You know, the lads have now had an extra training session, bit more of a warm down preparation. Shaun Jeffers has had another day with the physio and the treatment. Can they get him ready for Saturday, whatever the mystery muscle injury is? And, you know, I think Hungerford on a Tuesday night in the freezing conditions, I suspect we'd have come away with a lot more injury problems than we will have from a normal training session on Tuesday. So I think that's one positive out of this week is, you know, a bit of a free week for the lads going into what's going to be a really tough game. And we know after the FA Trophy game last season, Cheshunt fans, good support, very vocal. They're going to be well behind their lads on Saturday. You know, it's a big game for them. It's, you know, it's a Hertfordshire derby. It's going to be difficult.
Hertfordshire derby, they're into a semi-final of the Senior Cup now because beat Hemel Tuesday before last.
Are we in that, Tabs?
Cups. What do we want cups for? We've got to spend money on some Duraglit then, haven't we? So that's not going to happen. You throw me off my track there, Lee. Right. What does Nobby do now? He made 4 changes last week. He's got 2 games coming up in 4 days. Does he stick with last Saturday's lot or does he make changes again?
Vice comes in for me. Vice comes in for Neil. I think he's got that bit of experience. He's also take out the Oxford game aside, he can score some goals, can Mitch. So yeah, but again, it all depends on Jeffers, doesn't it? For me, I mean, it's like for like. I think Blackman starts as well because I think he's got that bit about him. He's got that professional. He's got that better caliber. Interesting whether he starts Clarkey. For me, I think McKenna and Adebayi have done superbly well. And bearing in mind that I was one of McKenna's biggest critics not too long ago, I think it's testament to his professionalism that he's developed his game accordingly. And I did say that he was still young enough to develop as a player, and he's done that tremendously well and forged an absolute wonderful relationship with Adebayi at the back. I see him coming back in for Clark.
Of course, the thing about Mitch, he's not really a goal scorer for us. 16 in 86 games is a good return for a midfielder, but it's not for a striker. But what he does do, as we mentioned before, he brings the best out of Shaun. And with Shaun not there, maybe it becomes a bit more difficult for him. Don't know. What would you do for Saturday, Jake?
I think I'd go the same with Lee, really. I think Joy's got to come in. I think Ryan Blackman's got to stay in midfield. I think Mitch has got to start in place of Joe Neal. And I totally agree with you, Dave, what you say. I think that's a good assumption. But I'd say, you know, looking on Saturday, he's got someone alongside him that can score goals in Glenn McConnell. Those flick-on, we know Glenn's got pace as well. He can burst through defence. If Mitch can get those flick-ons, those passes through, or take a man with him that opens up a little bit of space for Glenn to slide inside with, that I think if there's no Shaun, I think got to go with Mitch alongside Glenn because we know he can find the back of the net. And I think Joe Neal, again, I think he's an impact player at the minute, isn't he? From the bench, that's when he's looked best from. And I think that'd be preferable for Saturday.
So then you go on to next Tuesday, Havant and Waterlooville. I was side down the bottom to a side up the top. We've got quite a change in those 2 games. All right, it's difficult to talk before we see Saturday's game. But I wonder if Nobby's going to be a bit cagey and think, all right, I'll stick him in and know I can bring him in on Tuesday and just rotate it a bit like they seem to like to do in the game nowadays.
Potentially, but then you sort of say, you know, who do you change and who comes in? I think, you know, as Lee said, I think if you change the defence for Havant, I think you could easily get punished. I think if you brought in someone there, the midfield, I mean, we'll see how Ryan plays on Saturday, won't we? But, you know, we've got options there. Monash. I think up front is the question mark for me again, is Shaun. You know, going into the Havant game, it's a big game. You want your big men up there. And we know that Havant are a physical side. It's going to be a real challenge.
Well, I think this is where, let's just assume that Jeffers is out for both of the forthcoming games, right? So I think this is where Joe Neal comes into the equation for me for Havant. You know, he's a bit more physical. He's going to absolutely run the back four of them ragged. I think that's probably where you need a bit more effort in terms of your work rate rather than the skill. I think Cheshunt is the more winnable of the two games, and that's where the focus lies. That's where you possibly play your better players. Get the win there, and then worry about Havant later. If you start mucking around with, you know, Cheshunt game and then with one eye on Havant, that's when you might come unstuck. I think you've got to win what's in front of you, concentrate on Saturday, and then Tuesday will follow suit.
I think you're spot on there, Lee. Wouldn't argue that at all. How long have we got Glenn McConnell for? Is it a month?
Yeah, it was a month, wasn't it? And it was just around New Year's that he arrived, a couple of days before, because it was Job we signed just before Christmas, wasn't it? So
yeah.
Right.
So well, if you haven't seen us since then, and you're umming and ahhing about the next couple of games, get down there and see McConnell. If he turns it on like he's done since he came on at Oxford and then last Saturday as well, he's not going to be around here for long. Get down there and enjoy him. He looks a terrific prospect.
I'll just say as well, the fact that he's played so well in the absolute tipping rain of Oxford and the quagmire pitch at Clarence Park. Imagine what it's going to be like when you actually get like a really nice green top to play on. That geezer's going to be absolute mustard, surely.
Absolutely. Dave, have you checked if he wore shin pads on Saturday?
He had his shots up some of the time. Perhaps they slow him down, that's the thing, so you're better off without them. Right, let's have some predictions then. Cheshunt, go on, Jake.
Oh, 3-1 Saints.
And Havant?
Oh, 2-2.
No, we're going to win that one. Lee?
I'm going to go for 3-2 Saints on Saturday.
Ooh.
I think we might struggle against Havant, if I'm honest. I'm going to go for 1-0 and see what happens from there. But I'm happy to be proved wrong.
Well, Havant have won their last two games, a 3-1, I think, both of them. But before that, it only won 1 in 5, and I haven't kept a clean sheet in any of the last 7 games. So if we can get at them, if we can, you know, get Shaun out there somehow, you would fancy us to pierce their defence, I think.
I think the way we're going forward at the minute, absolutely. It's just the defensive questions at the back, isn't it? And again, set pieces, etc. We know what Havant can be like. And you have to remember as well, you know, that's a good squad they've got there, and there's a lot of money in that squad. They're all good players at this level. It's going to be a real challenge for Nobby, you know. And again, we've talked about, I think almost every week we've said, you know, it's almost a new challenge, haven't we? I think again, these 2 games coming up now, it's a difficult period for him, and again, it's going to be tough, and he's got a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah, it's still a learning curve for him, and he's doing very well so far. And so he's got a couple more good results to reflect back on after these 2 games.
Absolutely, and it's so easy to forget that, isn't it? He's a young manager, you know, dealing with a squad that 3-4 months ago was heading towards a bottom 6 finish. So, you know, there's no point overreacting to the last couple of results, is there?
And don't forget as well that he's been a lot of their teammates for years and years and years. So he's got to make that transition as well. It can't be easy dropping some of his teammates, but that's the job that he's been dealt now. So, and I think that he's got to look towards the future of this football club. You know, he wants, there's no hiding fact he wants to become a coach further down the line. He's got a perfect opportunity now to take us forward. You know, and yes, okay, use us as a stepping stone. We're not going to like it when he goes, but you know, we know he's going to go into bigger and better things because he's a footballing man. And I think what he's done in the short time that he has been in charge of us has been nothing less than fantastic, considering where we were 3 months ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement there.
Cool.
Right. Oh, there was a meeting last night or earlier this week, wasn't there, Jake? A trust?
Yeah, just the sort of monthly trust boards meeting, sort of catch up, sort of mention the fan away travel issues we sort of raised on the podcast last week and other supporters have raised. So discuss that and sort of looking at it in future as well. So yeah, any
Fans
comments? Fans Forum, Trust is very much pushing on it. The club has committed to Fans Forum. Like, I think that there was the original commitment was 3 a season. Obviously,
How many have we had this season?
I think it's 0 at the minute.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so the trust is very much pushing and is doing as much as it can, really.
So the club is committed as the club really wants to be then.
But the trust is doing what it can to try and get Fans Forum out there as soon as possible for everyone to be able to go to. Because I think everyone's got a lot of questions, haven't they, after what you can already, say it's been a turbulent season. So on and off the pitch. So I think a lot of questions there. So hopefully Fans Forum will be soon, fingers crossed.
3 a year. I think you misheard it, Jake. 1 every 3 years is what they said.
Dave, you should do stand
up.
up.
The last couple, and been at the last couple. That's too frequent as well.
Well,
anyway.
God, Dave, you were happy for most of this. What happened?
I know. I've gone back. Switch back to normal mode.
Oh, dearie me.
Tabs, I've got to ask, mate, what is your sweater you're wearing? I've not seen that one before.
Blue Arrow.
Blue Arrow, Christ.
So it's from about 1985, 86. I got one, my brother got one. Loads of supporters got them. They were actually popular, proper sweaters back then. It's hiding that thing there.
Oh,
and some of us can make it look pretty damn sexy, can't we?
No one on here, though, I bet.
No one here.
Dave, are you getting sponsorship from Blue Arrow? Or?
I wish.
They even exist anymore, do they, Blue Arrow?
No.
No, they got taken over, didn't they? And sadly, Tony Berry no longer exists as well.
Did you want to
run them?
Did you want to quickly mention former director Colin Wicks as well, Tabs? That would be a nice touch.
Very sad, wasn't it? Colin Wicks, who's director of a club, died earlier this month. He was the director during our conference national season, around about that sort of time. It was terrific. He was going around the club. He was doing raffles and everything, and you're being mugged off for £1 each time, but he didn't mind. He's always did it with a smile. He's always friendly and cheerful, because like all ex-Townsend pupils are, of course. And after he got fed up with the way it was run down the club there. Directors weren't given a voice. They were totally ignored by the owner at the time. So he went off to
that sounds familiar.
He went off up north to where he lives and became a director at North Ferriby United, got involved with them in all their glory days. And in recent years, he's been at Cleethorpes United. And if you go on the Cleethorpes site, they've done a terrific tribute to him. And I tell you what, it could have been word for word how he was looked at down here. And the funeral's on the 14th of February, somewhere up that way. If anybody's interested in going, get in touch with me and I'll give you the details. But yeah, it's a sad loss, isn't he, Colin is, isn't he, Lee?
Yeah, so I mean, the fact that he came down from Hull for quite a lot of the home games, I mean, the testament to the man, driving down from Hull to St Albans just to make tea, because that's what he wanted to do. He just wanted to be part of the Clarence Park matchday experience. He actually gave me one of my first ever design jobs when I worked for Queensway. He was in charge of the franchise of ChemDry, a carpet cleaning company, and he loved what we brought to the table in terms of the fanzine and the flags. And at that time, we were quite successful. We were out on a good run as well, and he loved all of that, and he loved the club, and you could see the passion every time he spoke about St Albans City. Yeah, we've lost a good one there, Tabs. We certainly have.
Yeah, we have, and condolences to his family.
I didn't know him, but I just want to say, Dave, that the photos you sent through of him from the conference season were absolutely superb. He just looked overjoyed, didn't he? Just being there and enjoying the experience. And yeah, rest in peace.
Yeah, lovely. Right, I think we're done for today, aren't we?
I think we are.
We are indeed. Send us a tweet at Podful of Saints. Send us an email as well, and we will see you again, same time, same place. Well, maybe not same time, next week. Bye bye, everyone.
When we can discuss our 6 points. See you at Clarence Park Saturday.